Welcome to a new episode of Opening Bid. I'm Yahoo Finance Executive Editor Brian Sazi. As I always say, this is the podcast that will make you a smarter investor. And to that end, really special guest here today, Frank McCourt, Executive Chair of McCourt Global and founder of Project Liberty. Good to see you here at the NASDAQ. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
So we're all watching this TikTok news with bated breath. Of course, I imagine you are too. Take us through what your involvement has been with TikTok, because we just got a decision. Federal Appeals Court upheld the law banning TikTok nationwide unless the viral video was sold off by ByteDance, a China company. Where do you stand in this? Do you still have a bid in for the company?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So I started Project Liberty 5 years ago, which is an effort to reimagine how the internet works, giving you and I and everyone ownership and control of their identity and their data, rather than this crazy internet we have right now where our data is scraped and used in permissionless ways. So we were moving along. I wrote a book on this subject came out in March called Our Biggest Fight. And then in April, this legislation was passed, where ByteDance had to either shut it down or sell it. And we thought this was like a fantastic moment. Why? Because we've built a tech stack, clean, American-made, bottom-up stack, which would enable this new internet where we'd all be in charge of our own data. We'd have agency returned to us and autonomy returned to us. And we have nearly 1.5 million people using it. 1.5 million people is a great proof of concept, but it's not an upgraded alternative internet. So when we heard ByteDance was going to have to do something with TikTok and its 170 million users, wow, what an opportunity. Buy that platform, migrate the user base, the 170 million, over to this new tech stack, and now we have a real alternative upgraded internet. So that's really what happened. This was very serendipitous. So 8 months ago, we started to put together all the pieces, the tech pieces, the capital, the legal pieces, and so forth, to actually buy the platform and move it over in the event that ByteDance decides to sell U.S. TikTok. Now, Friday, the appellate court made a 3-0 decision upholding the bipartisan legislation that ByteDance needs to shut down this platform by January 19th or be well on its way into a sales process. So we'll see what happens, but that's the state of play right now.
Who are you negotiating with on the ByteDance side, and what are those negotiations like?
Yeah, we're negotiating with nobody on the ByteDance side at the moment. We've reached out unsuccessfully because they've taken the position initially they were going to win the litigation. Now that they're going to appeal the litigation, that they were going to win the litigation, and now they're going to appeal the appellate court decision, and they're not talking about a sale as of yet. We don't know what ByteDance is going to do. They may let it shut down. I hope not. President-elect Trump hopes not. And President-elect Trump is a deal maker. I'm a deal maker. I think that there's a deal to be made here so that the U.S. TikTok can stay in business. We want to see the platform stay in business and the 170 million people enjoy it. It's a very popular platform. We don't want to see it shut down or banned. And as I said, President-elect Trump has said he doesn't want to see that either. So let's see if we can find a way here to make this a win-win-win, where the U.S. TikTok is split off from ByteDance. China gets compensated for that. U.S. citizens are no longer have their data scraped and have information, quote unquote, spread to them, which may or may not be accurate, and Americans can be protected, and the U.S. government can fulfill its duty to protect American citizens.
What do you think it's worth?
Good question. It will all depend, Brian, on what is being sold. We know the algorithm is not being sold, so that obviously brings the price tag down. Are they selling the user base? Are they selling the content? Are they selling the brand? All big questions. We're modeling out all scenarios, and we'll see. The user base is most important to us.
What is, just given well, you mentioned American-made. What does that look like? How does American-made technology, what would that do to a platform like TikTok?
Yeah, so you have as I said earlier, the Chinese government has said the algorithm is off limits. It's national, it's property of the Chinese Communist Party. So you're going to buy a platform without the algorithm that drives it.
So you have to make a new one.
So you have to do one of two things. You replicate the existing tech stack and re-engineer an algorithm. So you have, again, top-down, surveil, scrape data, accumulate it, and apply new algorithm to it. That's not what we're doing. And by the way, I think anyone that does that will run the risk of China having a backdoor into their app. So you may not have even solved the problem of China still having access to Americans' data. Our project is about building a clean, new American-made stack from the bottom up. So we're talking about a new protocol which actually moves from the era of the internet where our devices are on the internet, we're not, to an internet where we are on the internet. In other words, we're in charge of ourselves, our identity, our data. We permission its use. We get paid for our data, and so on and so forth.
I'd like to get paid for my data.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and we all should. I mean, look at you. What are these? The Magnificent Seven. What? Nearly 18 trillion now. Almost a third of the S&P 500. Nobody can say the data isn't worth anything, right? Right? We all know that. Let's share with the people creating the data, which is all of us. It's Americans are online a lot, and their data is extremely valuable. Let's create an upgraded internet where individuals get compensated, permission the use of the data, or rescind permission and get compensated for that data.
One of the long-held gripes with TikTok is that it's really addictive. Under your leadership, would it be less addictive?
Yes, because we're not looking at a centralized algorithm, right, designed to addict you. An internet where you and I are targeted and inundated, with ads and with news feeds and so on and so forth, all designed to trigger us, right? All designed to
click on that next thing. Buy that pair of slippers that magically appear on your Instagram account for 10 times in a row. Yeah.
Because you had a conversation with your wife about slippers, right? Yeah. All kind of creepy, to be honest, right? So, not the conversation with your wife. I'm just saying the fact that you talked to her about slippers, and the next thing you know, you're seeing ads for it. So, why not have an internet, which is rather than an attention economy, is an intention economy. You want slippers, you go online and get slippers. And they can be delivered to your doorstep tomorrow morning. You can get the best price, the right size, etc. All that's not going away. The ad tech economy is here to stay, so there will be ads in a new internet and so forth. But why have an internet that surveils us, that targets us, that micro-profiles us, that knows everything about us? Let's have an internet where we own our data. We own our identity. We're not giving it away so that we get the free use of an app, and that we can actually be in charge of ourselves online. As I said earlier, permission the use of the data, get compensated, and just go online and let the company, the advertiser, know what our intention is. Intention advertising, where you are a real person indicating your interest in something, is far, far more valuable to companies and advertisers than just flooding a zone and hoping to capture somebody's interest in slippers.
I imagine you have sharp views then on, I now go to my X account, and I didn't realize this till 2 weeks ago, maybe because I'm getting older, I'm just not as cool as I once was, but I was getting served feeds from a really eccentric, crazy people that I didn't know why I was being served that. And then I realized it was the For You tab. So I was being served this new information from X, given all the changes that Elon has made on the platform. What do you think about what that platform is doing to the internet?
Well, it's not just that platform. It's the point here is that, and we're learning about this through TikTok, which is quite interesting. And we want to turn this TikTok problem into a solution for the entire internet. What we're learning, and people are starting to see now with TikTok, is that this is a surveillance-based technology that scrapes our data, micro-profiles us, and then manipulates us. Okay? Yeah, it might be to buy something, but more importantly, it's to think a certain way, right? I was very taken by Jack Dorsey, who founded Twitter this summer in Oslo, when he said we should be talking far less about the loss of free speech and far more about the loss of free will. That's what's going on with these platforms. TikTok is beginning to educate the American public that what the harms are. Now, TikTok is unique because it's also a national security risk.
So you do think it's a national security risk, TikTok?
Totally. I do think, however, the American platforms are essentially operating in the same way, and I think people are beginning to wake up to this. Like, why do I feel that this is kind of creepy? Why do I feel like I'm being fed stuff that I don't want? Why do I feel kind of lousy after the fact, like I've spent all this time and kind of wasted time? It's because it's very much a targeting technology. Let's change how it works. And the point here is it's changeable. We've built the technology at Project Liberty. We can operate differently. We have clean stack, bottom up, no China backdoors, none of that. We can migrate users over, spin up an alternative, upgraded internet, and then let people decide which internet would they prefer. One where they're surveilled and their data is scraped and they get a few free apps, or one where they're in charge. When it comes to the algorithms, right now in the current internet, the algorithms are centralized and they're very powerful in the hands of a few. We live in a world where you can curate your own algorithm. You can have, Blue Sky's doing it, they have all kinds of algorithms that you can choose. You can curate your own feed. The internet is awesome. The technology is awesome. I'm a big bull on the internet and technology, just not the way it's designed and being used.
Frank, hang with us. We're going to go off for a quick break. We'll be right back on Opening Bid. All right, having a fascinating chat here with Frank McCourt on all things TikTok, saying you still have that bid in for TikTok. Just given everything you've said on TikTok and what people know about it, wouldn't it just be better if it didn't exist?
Well, no, I'd like to see it continue. I think most of the 170 million people on it would, like a better version of it to exist.
Those are creators. They're making money.
Yeah.
They rely on this to pay their bills.
Totally. And when we started this process, this bid for TikTok, what we call the people's bid, and I kind of want to Green Bay Packer this, if you know what I mean. Just let the user base own it, a piece of it, that is. Obviously, there's a significant amount of money involved here, so their investors, conventional investors, are going to have to be involved. But let the user base own a piece of that. When we started this journey, I hosted 20 of the biggest influencers on TikTok. They reached over 100 million of the 170 million user base. I wanted to know what they would think of our bid, because we didn't want to do something and then the next thing you know, it's everybody on TikTok is against it. And it was very interesting. The TikTok user, the influencers, the creators, and so forth, they're not thrilled. And the reason they're not thrilled is there's several, but there are two fundamentally important reasons. Number one, they create some content, it goes viral, they have a lot of followers, following that piece of content, and everything's going fine. They create another piece of content they think is very similar, will appeal to the same audience, nobody watches it, nobody looks at it, and they don't know why, because it's a black box. And so it's called shadow banning. So they're not in control of the algorithm. They're not in control of what content is going to go ahead and amp up and what's going to just be ignored, right? That's frustrating to them. The second thing is they have no direct relationship with their community. They don't know who their community is, so they can't interface with it. They can't say, hey, what do you want more of? What do you want less of? What do you like? What don't you like? And so, TikTok is built on what's called a content graph, and it's very focused on pushing content out that really serving the purpose of the Chinese Communist Party fundamentally, because we now have learned that a lot of the content that gets pushed out amongst the fun stuff and the innocent stuff is content to affect the way American citizens think about certain issues, and what those issues may be, what's going on in the Middle East, or what happened historically in Hong Kong or Tiananmen, what's happening with the Uyghurs, et cetera, et cetera. And people now realize pro-China content is amplified massively, and content that is anti-America, anti-democracy, anti-free society is also amped up. So you don't get a level playing field with TikTok. Hey, look, the people's bid for TikTok, it shows up on the comparable platform on Instagram and YouTube, 125 times more than it does on TikTok itself. Okay, so there's somebody controlling an algorithm.
So as it stands, this TikTok could be banned January 19th. President-elect Trump gets inaugurated the 20th. Have you talked to anyone in his sphere of influence about how he might leave?
Yeah, we're beginning those conversations. We're reaching out now. It's very important that, you know, the Project Liberty and the People's Bid is not a partisan project. This is a project for Americans, and we're in the process of reaching out to President-elect Trump and his people to talk about this, because this is a really big decision. I do want to add that, you know, he and President Biden have both saw this as a national security risk. President Trump at the time initiated this whole process. It was President Biden that signed the legislation that a very strong bipartisan vote occurred in Congress. I mean, when's the last time we've had a vast majority of Congress on both sides of the aisle?
Not many.
Exactly right. Why? Clear and present danger to the United States. This is a national security risk, and so here we are, and we're rapidly facing a deadline where this is going to have to be shut down or sold. President-elect Trump has said he doesn't want to see it banned. I want to be clear. We don't want to see it banned either, and there's a deal to be made here. And President Trump is an ultimate deal maker, right? That's what he's a business person like myself, and we should figure out a way to do this where it's a real win-win-win, as I say, and that's I think very, very possible. Our bet is it's going to be sold. We may be wrong. It may be shut down. I hope not, but we're prepared in either event.
Part of being a businessman is knowing the landscape. I mean, there's been rumors, there's big names here also competing against Activision Blizzard former CEO Robbie Kotick, former Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. Are those folks still in the process? Are they involved? Like, what does that landscape of bids look like?
It's unclear. I mean, the word we're getting is that they've backed off a bit on this, and I think the reason is, and again, I could be wrong. And
you do seem the most aggressive.
Yeah, and I think the reason why, Brian, is that we have a clean stack. Okay, so let's talk about what's required to buy this. Number one, you can't be a candidate for antitrust action. Big tech can't move on this because nobody's going to let big tech buy TikTok. Number two, you need to pass a CFIUS vetting. CFIUS is the one that passed the finding that said it had to be shut down in the first place because it was a national security threat. We pass a CFIUS vetting. Next, you have to have technology that will function without the algorithm. And lastly, you need a clean stack. You can't just, as I said, re-engineer the algorithm and use the current stack, because guess what? China is going to have backdoors into it. You don't solve the problem that way. The last point I would make, let's look at what's happened with big social media platforms. This is not the heyday for social media platforms. This is not the early heady days where the value was increasing and they were growing in user base massively. This is the mature phase of social media platforms on the current version of the internet. There's lots of lawsuits for good reason. There's more coming for good reason. Anybody that buys TikTok is taking on that litigation, that exposure, if they replicate what's there now, because it will operate the same way. And it will surveil people, it will scrape their data, and it will apply algorithms top down. And that creates a lot of problems. And what we're learning is it's not good for democracy, it's not good for civil discourse, it's not good for an information ecosystem, right, where we have lots now of mis and disinformation, just a deluge of it. And most importantly, it's harming kids. And it's clear, the harms are clear. But rather than sit and throw more logs on the fire of all the harms, because I think people are now seeing them more broadly, let's talk about how to fix it. And that's what Project Liberty is focused on. Take this problem of TikTok, turn it into a solution to actually compress time, create an upgraded internet that people can choose or not to use.
To be clear, for those folks listening to this podcast, you haven't been a tech mogul over the 34 years of your career. You've done many different things. Like, why are you so passionate about this?
Well, because when you see a problem, you can't unsee it, and when you happen to have some insight as to how you fix it, you kind of have an obligation to do something about it. That's at least how I was raised. I sat at my dinner table. I'm one of 7 kids, and we were pretty outspoken about problems, as most kids are. And there wasn't a dinner that went by that my mom didn't say, "Hey, you kids did a great job defining the problem. Now, what are you going to do about it?" So this is a what are you going to do about it type of problem. I've been building infrastructure for almost 50 years. My family for over 130 years. This is an infrastructure issue. This is an engineering problem where we have an internet that we're using now broadly. Billions of people are connected to it, that was never designed to operate and be used the way it's using. I've talked to the visionaries that created the internet. I've talked to the visionary who created the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee. These people did not intend the internet to be used the way it's being used. What they created, what they envisioned, was something that was very decentralized, that really connected us all, allowed us to share information, to all get smarter, and to advance civilization. What's happened is we're all getting dumber, right? Because there's no identity on the internet.
You can't process all this information.
Particularly, and how do you know what's true and what's false? You can't. It's like going into the bookstore and having your 10-year-old go in, and fiction and nonfiction are all mashed up. And it's up to your 10-year-old to figure out what's fiction and nonfiction when they read the book. We curate information as a society. That's what we do. That's what knowledge is about. It's getting smarter. And right now we have an internet that's allowed bad actors to actually amplify bad behavior, as opposed to amplifying behavior of good people and so forth. So let's fix it. It's fixable. That's the fundamental point. This is not the biggest problem in the world to solve. This can be fixed when you redesign the stack from the bottom up. The internet will work the same way, the user experience will be very similar, but individuals will be in charge as opposed to black box algorithms. That's what needs to change.
In the last minute of our podcast, we always like to get our hot takes, a hot take from one of our guests who used to own the Los Angeles Dodgers. What do you think about that Juan Soto contract? I mean, from the outside looking in, I mean, I'm sure you're still a sports fan, avid sports watcher, but holy cow, what, $50 million plus a year? No deferred money? Does that make sense from a business standpoint?
Well, the great thing about being the former owner of the Los
you can
Angeles
say whatever you want.
Dodgers, or I can say nothing at all. Let me just say, it's a hell of a lot of money, and I just think that when I got involved in baseball back in 2004, it was coming off days where the economics were pretty wacky, and then Commissioner Selig was very, very focused on getting things back in more of a balanced way, so that the league was healthier, right? And I just hope baseball, just really focuses on the good of the sport and the health of the league generally, because you need other teams. You can't play by yourself. You need other teams to play.
Juan Soto could maybe play by himself for $51 million a year. Right?
Maybe not even play. He should be sitting with you and talking about business.
Yeah,
now.
I actually have to find out on the podcast. I mean, you think we're near $1 billion player coming up in our lifetime?
Well, look at the trend lines, right? And I just think that's that's something that the bigger issue to me is the health of the sport, the health of the league, and its financial health I'm talking about, and because you need 30 healthy teams, and teams where every fan and every community can believe their team has a chance to win.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Frank McCourt, Executive Chair of McCourt Global and the founder of Project Liberty. Good to see you. Please do stay in touch. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Brian. Nice to be with you.
All right, that's the latest opening bid episode. Please do check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. Hit us with those great reviews. Really appreciate it.